In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, and welcome to America in Black and White. I'm your host, Charles King, and tonight we continue our mission of exploring the stories that shape our communities, our leadership, and our legacy. On this December 2nd, Season 3, Episode 161, we are joined by a man whose life reflects the power of service, entrepreneurship, and community empowerment, City Councilman James Herring. His career is a testament to what happens when vision meets responsibility. As a councilman, he has worked tirelessly to ensure fiscal accountability, strengthen infrastructure, and uplift the citizens he represents. As an entrepreneur, he has built opportunities that extend beyond politics, proving that leadership is not confined to public office but thrives wherever innovation and resilience are applied. Equally important is his commitment to community outreach programs that bring people together, provide resources, and inspire hope. His work is not just about policy or business, but about people and the belief that every citizen deserves a chance to thrive. Guiding his journey are the towering influences of Black history: Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Carter G. Woodson, and Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. Their teachings on justice, education, empowerment, and cultural awareness have shaped his vision and continue to inspire his mission. Tonight, we'll explore how their legacies live on through his work and how their wisdom fuels his dedication to service and leadership. So stay with us because this conversation promises to be one of inspiration, reflection, and truth. A reminder that the past is not just history, but a living guide for the future. This is America in Black and White, and I'd like to introduce you guys to Mr. James Herring.
Thank you, Mr. King. I really appreciate that introduction. Hey, you make me sound really great. you know, I'm just like, okay, but I appreciate you having me on the show tonight. I really look forward to our conversation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Is there anything else you'd like to, say to our audience before we get going?
Well, no, I just like I say, like you said in my introduction, I'm all about the people. I appreciate them supporting me over all of these years. I'm going on over 20 years in office, 9 terms, and I'm just there to do the work of the people and to improve the quality of life for the people in my community. So I want
Yes,
to thank them all because I wouldn't be at this point without the support of them and definitely of the elders in my community who have always lifted me up since 1964 when I was born.
oh wow, oh wow. See, that itself is all. You're speaking truth to power already. Well, I want to start with we're going to talk about your career as a city councilman. So, can you tell us what inspired you to run for city council?
It's a funny story. I the year before I got on the council, it was a major snowstorm in the city. So, the streets weren't getting plowed. And I was complaining to a certain council member, and the council member was like, well, if you don't like it, then run for office. So I said, So I thought about it. I was like, it went over my head. I was like, I'm not worrying about it. I said, all I need you to do is plow the streets. So some residents came up to me like 30 days before the petitions were due to run for office. And they're like, would you run for office? And I was just like, what does that entail? I said, nah, I'm working full time. I'm going to school part time. I mean, it's just too much. I said, okay. I said, you know what? I thought about it. I said, you know what? They did so much for me coming up. I got to where I am because of them. The least I can do is serve in the office in a position to give back to my community. So I filled out my petition. I submitted my petition like a week before it was due. And when I ran, I came in first in my ward. We had a ward system, wards 1, 2, and 3, and I came in first. And actually, when I came on, we actually swept out the sitting council. So they replaced us all with new council members in a new, trying to move the city in a new direction. So that's how I originally got started on it, and that was in 2003. So I've been on there. Yeah, I took a break in 2009 and 2011, and I got back on again in 2011, and I've been on ever since. So I just won re-election in June of 2024, and this term will be up in 2029. And I've told the citizens, this is it for me. That's 24 years, and that's a long time.
So what do you consider your proudest legislative achievement?
I think my proudest legislative achievement is getting the city back on a good financial footing. We had to pass major legislation. We had to put in a lot of internal controls. When I came into office in 2003, the city's charter was threatening to be revoked. Basically because we hadn't paid certain taxes. The federal government was coming in and they were going to put a lien on the city as a whole because payroll taxes weren't paid. We were constantly borrowing money to pay our bills. And my whole thing coming in there was that, looking in our charter, I'm like, you need to have tighter financial controls in place. There's no way in the world we're going to make it out of here. We shouldn't have to borrow money to pay bills because that's just an additional expense. And some council members, some people didn't understand that. We've always done that. We've always borrowed $250,000. I say, but that's, $250,000 you got to pay back. We need to learn to sustain on what we bring in. And so basically just bringing in, instituting internal controls just to make sure that the city was financially stable. And then moving from there, we were able to do more programming for our citizens in this community because then we knew what we actually had to work with and not borrowing to move forward.
So it sounds like you bring some type of accounting experience, to your seat as councilman, but how do you take that experience and you bring that back to your constituents?
So basically with that, especially, I've been doing accounting for over 40 years. I've done nonprofit, for-profit, and government accounting. So what I do with that is I bring it back to my constituents by way of, like you said, legislation that's going to basically be fiscally responsible because we got to look at that. I try to let them know, we can't always spend because you think we have money. We don't always have money. You got to remember, you always got a payroll that's always going to have to be paid. You got to have something in your reserve. We had just this last fiscal year. I told the council at that point, I said, we cannot continue spending the way we're spending. They wanted to have a retirement account for our employees, and while I support our employees 100%, we as a community could not financially support that program because it would give us a deficit. And of course, and at the end of the year, we ended up with a $500,000 deficit, something that Glennon has never had. But, other council members, they did not want to listen. I said, it's good. We want to help people, but you can't help people to the detriment of the taxpayers, because then we had to raise taxes up by 9 cents, which is like $300 to $400 per household. So you're not helping the citizens that way. You're hurting them because there's more money out of their pocket. We have a large contingent of seniors in our community. That's my pride and joy there. I love my seniors. So them having to pay an additional $300, that's a prescription. That's a bill. That's something that that's food on the table. So I try to bring financial responsibility. I didn't even support the budget because of it. I just didn't think it was right to support a budget with that big of a tax increase when when the liability should have went across the entire city. It should have been job cuts. It should have been some budget cutting, and we could have raised the taxes a little bit on the citizens. So, and so that's what I try to do. I just try to make sure that we can move forward without really straining the citizens, because we don't have a very big commercial tax base. We just recently got a big development that came in, but even still, compared to some other municipalities, most of our revenue is generated on the backs of the people through property taxes.
Mm. So, you know, when you mention being fiscally responsible, because I mean, as I think that's really a good thing, especially when you think about like the size of your city, the number of people that are there, and you want to make sure that you're not doing anything that's going to, you know, like raise, you know, amounts on the citizens in more ways than they can actually handle. So can I ask you this? Just when it comes down to like that budget and so forth, do you have any input as to those things that can go in and what should come out?
Oh yes, we always have the final say on the budget is the city council. I mean, it's 7 of us, so I try to, you know, we when it comes to us, the mayor will present it, and we will take it, and normally we cut it up because there's a lot of grandiose things in there that we really can't do. You know, so we just want to make sure we are able to sustain the services that we have and improve on some other services, while you know, trying to provide some relief to the citizens. So when the budget comes, we've taken budgets down. I mean, we've cut them up quite a bit. You know, we've reduced. You know, the mayor will put positions in the budget. You know, like we can't afford that. Take them out. You know. You're a little top heavy. We can't do that. You know, you got to look at this, because but I always say, if you put a position in the budget, you got to have a constant revenue stream to fund that. And that's by you know, and the only way you're going to do that is by property taxes. So my thing is, at this point, right now, we're still maintaining services. We're still getting the services out to the people. You don't need additional people because you think somebody needs a secretary. My thing is, you don't need an administrative assistant who needs a secretary who needs an administrative assistant. You know, so you know, so I'm just like, you know, you need to look at that. You know, we're a small community. You know, we are a small community. We're a small town. You know, some people want to compare us to some of the bigger municipalities. I say, but you got to remember, they got $24 million budget. They got a commercial infrastructure that's way larger than what we have. So yeah, so when it comes down to the budget, we'll cut it up left and right. We will sit around the table. You know, some of my suggestions are taken, some of them aren't. You know, but that's you know, that's a democratic government. You know, the majority makes the decision. I think council members, they do listen to what I have to say, and they take into consideration what I have to say. Some support it, some don't. You know. But I mean, it does frustrate me because I can see the end results of that when you start spending like, you know, it's going out of style.
So how do you balance fiscal responsibility with community needs?
So me personally, I always I try to look at the need of people and what we can afford. What is the easiest things that we can get accomplished? You know, because one thing I don't like to do is I don't like to promise people, oh, we're going to do this, this, and this, and then nothing happens because you really don't have the money to do it, or it's a 4-year project. So what I look at is the greatest needs, which are the easiest to achieve. So, you know, and so I try to make sure we can look at, you know, replacing a sidewalk, replacing potholes, replacing some streets. You know, we have major street repair that needs to be, we have major infrastructure, and some of it we can't just get to. Like right now, we have an issue where we're trying to get an elevator installed in our building. I've been pushing for the elevator for almost 10 years, you know, but we've had other pressing needs that come up. We've also had issues with, you know, the getting the architectural designs done. And then the problem is you have another council that comes on that is not as important. But my thing is, when you need an elevator in your building so that seniors can get up there to participate in their government, I feel that's an important need that you need to have. So, yeah, so I look at it based on what we can afford, you know, and I would tell citizens, you know, right now we can't afford these, you know, these bigger things, because right now you got one or two choices. We need to try to address the smaller items, or we could do the bigger ones and raise your taxes, or you can wait and let us save money and try to look for a grant through the state or through our bond bill, the state, and fund it through that way.
Well, actually, there's a comment here by Mr. Maurice Hairston, and he says,
Mm.
"Yes, sir," with an exclamation point. Let me put that on the screen for you. uh, would you like to elaborate on that, or are you ready, or can we move on?
And what did he say?
He said, "Yes, sir."
Oh yeah, that's Councilman Harrison. I serve on the city council with him, you
Mhm.
know, and I mean, like I said, he's a big proponent also of community, and just to give a quick story on him, you know, when I was running for office, I've been in office for a number of years, and I was always looking for somebody young to get on a city council because a lot of us are older, we're retired, you know, and so I'm like, we need to get some young blood on here, you know, just to keep the momentum going, you know, also somebody that can bring to our attention and to bring to our attention what the young community needs. So we brought him on board. He was on our permit review committee. He was on our youth advisory board. So I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, you thinking about running for council?" And he looked at me like I was crazy, and he's like, "I don't know, you know." And the young guy, so I encouraged him to run, and he ran. He actually ran about the same age I was when I ran, like 30-something years old.
Mhm.
I think he was 33, 32, 33. So, you know, and that's, like I say, again, what I try to do is try to pull young people in and get them involved in government and get involved in their community because they live here, you know. So it's something that's really needed because, again, I mean, as I get older, I'm just like, you know, somebody else got to pick up the reins and run with this. So, but
Well,
yeah.
I gotta say that I think you guys have got some great camaraderie because Councilman Hairstone, he too was on the show, and I tell you, you know, for the things that he are doing that you mentioned, they are excellent. So I know that that means that you guys primarily are doing a lot in a collaborative kind of way to actually keep these communities together, and that's what I think makes the position that you guys have so important.
Yeah, I mean, and that's so true because again, we partner on a lot of events together. We do Glenarden Day, which brings in about 600 people. You know, we just got off of about a week or so ago. We did a Thanksgiving luncheon. You know, that's when that thing about that's one of Councilman Harrison's ideas. He's like, you know, we need to bring together the community together for like a luncheon at Thanksgiving time. You know, and so we started doing that, and we just came off of that, and that is a really great event because families come out to that, and like last year, one woman said, I'm so glad y'all had this because I don't normally do Thanksgiving with my family. I no longer cook, but she was able to invite her kids to come out for this event, and we had a photo booth there, so they were able to take pictures together. You know, so I mean, and like I said, we do an expungement event. We put that on, and you know, that's one of my pet projects is the expungement fair that we put on because we expunge the records of people who are in the system and who actually, you know, made a mistake but need to have their record expunged. You know, these in Maryland, which I think is one of the most unfair places in the world. I can go down to the commissioner's office right now and go down there and raise my right hand and say, Charles King assaulted me, and he's assaulted me, and I want to press charges. And they'd be like, "Are you telling the truth?" I say, "Yes." By tomorrow, your name will be in our court dockets as being charged with assault. Just
Just
on
like
me,
that.
just like that. And so, if you go to the case search database, you will see your name in there, Charles King, charged with assault, just like that. And so, a lot of that's happened to a lot of people. A lot of people have had misdemeanors on their record since they were 20, 30, 40, 20 years. I mean, that are 20, 30, 40 years old. So, you know, I always thought it was unfair. And so I've always tried to have this program to go forward. And so, you know, me and Councilman Harrison, we've done it for the last 3 years. We've expunged over 300 records for people in Prince George's County. So we try to bring the community together like that with Glenarden Day. We do cancer awareness. You know, we try to bring information to the citizens about because cancer affects our community so much greater than other communities. So I was trying to get the information out there. Hey, get the prostate exam, get breast exams. You know, if you feel bad, go to the doctor, get checked out. You know, so the events we put on are all community-based events to bring the community together.
Mhm. So, what challenges have you faced in public office?
I think the greatest challenge I've faced in public office is basically, I think the greatest challenge is trying to maintain the fact that you're working, the work you're doing is for the people. Is people appreciate what you do, because I'm gonna tell you this position is really is a thankless job. I've been on the council for, like I said, over 20 years. I've had people cuss me out. I've had people threaten me. I had people flatten my tires, all because of a decision that I've made or a statement that I've made, or, you hear from the people who can't stand you. You really do. You hear from them all the time. But the people who support you, they won't come out. They'll tell you privately. Now, I go to the grocery store privately. They'll tell me, "Oh, you're doing a great job, Councilman. I love what you're doing. I love what you're doing." But they'll never come up in public and say it. So what people hear is what the negative people say. And unfortunately, that's what sticks to people, and people follow behind it. They don't know what I'm doing in the background, and I don't advertise what I do in the background. I just do the work of the people. Those who appreciate it are going to tell me, and those who don't are going to tell me, and whether it's right or wrong, you got some people are just naysayers. Yes. So I think that's the most difficult part, is sometimes you got to really pull just really pull your whole self, pull your whole self, not only into the position. You also got to wear iron vests. Really, you can't let things, you can't be soft-hearted. And that's what I always say. I mean, my biggest thing is people with these delicate sensibilities. I can sit there and go back and forth with a council member. We can yell and scream and hoop and holler, and I can still say good night. I can still say, "Hey, hope your family's doing okay." But you got others who just carry this grudge, and I'm just like, it isn't that deep. We all here about to help the people. We're just here to help the people out. That's it.
So how do you ensure transparency and accountability in government?
What I do, honestly, and I know they can't stand it, is I will quote that charter. I read our charter. I know our charter back and forth. I say, that's not in the charter. That's not in the charter. You can't do that. That's not in the charter. If you do that, and I tell them, I say, if you do that, I'm going to put it out there. I have no problem getting on TV and saying, this is what they did, and this is not in line with the charter, and they get upset. I'm like, this is what they did. This is not in line with the charter, and the citizens, you need to watch and see what's happening with your government. I have no problem doing that. I think that that's important in any government. Being transparent, letting people see the way you do things. I mean, voting on things publicly, doing this behind the door thing, closed door thing is not, I don't like it at all, because again, I think it's unfair, because the citizens are paying our salary, they are maintaining this community, and they need to know where their tax dollars are going. So like I say, you want to call me a snitch? Okay, I'm a snitch that day, because I'm going to tell on you if you sit there and use the city's tax dollars in a way that's not supposed to be used.
Councilman Councilman Harry, what I love as what you're saying is that, you're about the transparency and you're about the authenticity. And it seems like you are a man that like to do things by the book. With that being maybe, the thing that actually sets everything going and keeps everything flowing, in the way that you see it. Are there a lot of councilmen that more than disagree with you, but they really like to argue that point, even though you see it as black and white? Do you have a lot of those disagreements?
Oh yeah, we constantly do. We constantly do. You get one council member saying, "Well, I read it this way," and I'd be like, "Well, no, it's plain and simple. This is what the charter says." And another council member may say, "Well, I think it's this way," and I would be like, "Well, your thinking gonna get you locked up. So you really need to look. You need to read that over again, because you're moving in the wrong direction." So it does happen, and then we have to disagree. And then we have to disagree. I mean, agree to disagree. I'm gonna stand by my stance, and they're gonna stand by theirs. I'm like, then if we really wanted to solve it, we can just call our attorney and let them solve it. But then once again, if the attorney sides with me, they'd be like, "Well, that's just the attorney's opinion. We ain't got to do that." So I'm like, okay, whatever. You just wanted to argue then, So.
Right. So how many councilmen do you guys have, on the council?
There's 7 council members.
7. Okay. Oh, so you have to have the odd number, so it can always be 4-3 either way.
Yes, 4-3. 4 is the magic number in the city of Glenard. And if you get 4, you want to get what you want.
So, what role does infrastructure development play in shaping community life?
I think infrastructure development plays a major role in Glenarden. Glenarden was originally a plantation, and where it was developed was the slave quarters. So, of course, where they had the slaves or enslaved African Americans, that was always the worst property. So what we sit on, in my ward where we sit at, and really all across the city, we sit on springs, which constantly rises up and breaks up the streets. So, infrastructure development is a major issue because we got to divert these springs, which costs a lot of money. I mean, one street we diverted the springs that cost $30,000 just to divert the spring, and another like $15,000 to pave it over. So that's a very major thing. Again, we're an old community. We've been here since 1939. Sidewalks are coming up. We have trees the roots have pushed the sidewalks up. We got to get those taken care of. We got seniors that like to walk. The sidewalks are uneven. We don't want anyone to get hurt. Again, like I said, road repairs. We have a playground in every one of our wards that we have to maintain. Right now, we're working on our Martin Luther King Jr. Park. We had to redevelop that. That's been about maybe an 8-year process. We're trying to wrap it up because we funded it mostly through state grant money. And that's what we try to do. We try to get as much grant money as we possibly can to address these major infrastructure, because they're major jobs, and it takes a lot of money to address them in this area, because like I said, again, when it's been neglected for so long, you have to, figure out innovative ways to get it done. We, like I said, again, when we had in my Ward 1, we had the water company come through. They had to do a major pipe replacement. So I'm like, well, if they're doing pipe replacement, they need to pave the streets. And they're like, well, we don't pave all streets. Somehow they ended up doing it. They paved the whole street, the whole ward. So, you just got to figure out ways to maintain the infrastructure. But again, at times we can't. We got to fund it. I think we just spent almost $1 million just recently for curbs, gutters, and streets. And that's because we had enough money from our reserves to do this.
So let me ask you this, because I know that you guys may be a small city. Are you guys allocated money on an annual basis from the capital to help your city to continue to run?
So normally what we get from the state of Maryland, we'll get, like for road repair, we get what they call a highway user fund. It's a highway user fund. And basically what they do is they estimate how many roads you have in your community, and they will give you money to maintain those, because again, we are on a major highway, Martin Luther King Highway, which is a major highway which runs right through the community, and people veer off the highway, go through the community. So they're saying, to be fair, we want to help you maintain your roads. I mean, they give us something. We get maybe like $100,000, $200,000 a year, maybe, for that. I don't know, maybe cover a couple of streets. We may be able to get a grant for some infrastructure, but mostly 90% of our infrastructure costs are covered by the citizens of Glenarden through tax dollars.
Wow. So, I mean, because I'm just thinking, and maybe I'm saying this wrong, but I always thought that, on an annual basis, I know that when the state, of course, which has the major budget, and it has to allocate money out to its cities and municipalities, on an annual basis, actually, to continue to run. I always thought that when it comes to like projects that you're talking about, like road projects and things of that nature, that you guys have to apply to the state in order to get the grant to fund those.
Yeah, we can apply to the state to get the grant, but it's like in Maryland, it's like it's almost like a lottery, and who can have the lottery. We got like in Prince George's County alone, we got 27 municipalities, and they're all applying for money. And you got to jump through hoops. You got to make sure you kiss the ring of your state senators and your delegates, and make sure that they're on board with it. Because again, they're not going to go out there and stick their neck out for you, which I don't blame them. I would stick my neck out for you if you're not going to actually be able to do the project. So it's like they got like each project, and then so what they'll do is they'll look at it, and you may ask for $2 million, they may give you $100,000, they may give you $200,000, maybe. So it's really a shell game. You can't count on it every year. As a matter of fact, Maryland just went through this major deficit in the state of Maryland, so they cut back on all their grants. So there's no funding coming from anybody, really, We, and that's and then and it trickles down to the county. The county had a deficit, so we can't get no funding from the county. So we we're really on our own until things get better and the county offer these grant programs. I mean, and even with the federal government, you don't know what's going to happen with the federal government. Sometimes they offer grants, sometimes they don't. But right now we are in a situation where we can't, we have to rely on ourselves. I'm trying to think, like I said, we did get highway user money, which we've had for a while, but even that you got to spend it in a certain amount of time before they decide, hey, you don't need it anymore. So yeah.
That's one thing that I always find to be so strange is when when you get these grants that you have to use the money in a particular time frame.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so can you tell me, with you guys being like a part of local city county government, does that change compared to the grants that businesses and people apply for? Is that different in how
See,
that process works?
I think it's different than when people apply for, because usually those grants they apply for are, I think they give them those and they for a specific need. Usually if it's a nonprofit, that a lot of times they use theirs. Now, like right now, we've gotten a couple of grants. We got a $400,000 grant from the state of Maryland to build a police station. Now that grant is about 2 years old, and I told them, we need to do something with it. We got to spend something on it because the clock is ticking down. Once you get to the 5 years, they pull it back, and they pulled it back before. We got 2 other grants from the state, and that clock is ticking. So I'm like, if we're going to build this police station, we really need to move forward with it because again, they've done it before in the state of Maryland, where especially when Larry Hogan, who was a Republican and it was in office, he looked at every project. He just pulled back grant after grant after grant. So with municipality, they're saying basically, if you're not going to use it, let's give it to somebody else to use it and come back to us later. But one thing you don't ever want to do is you don't want to turn in a grant because it'd be a slim chance to none of you getting another one.
So can you tell us what's the overall health of PG County?
In Prince George's County, I think Prince George's County is fairly healthy. I honestly do. I think everybody was hit hard in this last year with this with budget deficits and the way the economy was going, the price of everything going up, but I think Prince George's County is doing fairly well. I think they are standing strong. I think we have some good people in our on our county council in our executive office. So they're doing pretty good. They're doing pretty good. I mean, they haven't, let's say they were able to close their budget gap. I don't think it was too much belt tightening, but it was some.
So how do you engage citizens in the decision-making process?
Well, my thing, what I did is I actually worked with another group of citizens. Some years back, one thing I was doing, I started a group called the Glen Woods Neighborhood Neighborhood Association. And basically what I would do is I had space up at the town hall. I was a council member then. I had space up at the town hall. I say, okay, I'm coming out on Saturdays. Y'all come on out. This is your opportunity to talk to me and some other council members about anything you want to talk about. I say, and one thing we're going to do is we're going to feed you. So, bring out, we have lunch for them, we just have them come out and just talk about this. And, you get a few people out there to come out with their concerns, which was really good. It kind of disappointed me because we have like over 600 homes here and we get maybe like 20 or 30 people. But at least I say I try to hear from the people, and I would pay for all of this out of my pocket. I would mail around postcards. I would pay for it all out of my pocket, just to 600 homes and just say, come on out, we can provide lunch. Let me hear from you. Let me know what you want, because that's the only way I can really make sure that we give you what you need. And then I would also, and I would tell citizens all the time, come on up, call me up, email, you can email, you can call us at City Hall, let us know how you feel. Because the only way the council is going to know what's going on is how you feel. And know how you feel is if you speak up and speak out. And what citizens don't realize is that, unfortunately, sitting on this council for so many years, it kind of frustrates me when you get council members who will listen to one council member. One citizen or 2 citizens or 3 citizens and make a decision for 6,000. They've changed legislation for 6,000, changed good legislation. They've adjusted it because 3 citizens came out and complained about it. And I said, you don't do that. The rule is, and I try to tell them, if you don't hear from a minimum 10% of the people, you don't make no major changes to your laws, But you got, and I think those council members are ones who, my thing is you can't pander to your citizens all the time. I mean, you listen to them, but you can't pander to them. You can't let 2 or 3 citizens come up there and change a whole law or change a whole program because one, either they're your friends or you just want to make them your friend. I'm like, see, I'm not about the friendship stuff. I mean, even the citizens that I know that I'm close to, I would tell them I can't do that. I can't do that because I got to look after everybody. Yeah, you may have you may need something in front of your house, but again, that's not my responsibility. That's not the city's responsibility. You're supposed to maintain it. So I can't sit there and change it for you and change the law for you because we're friends. And I would say, if you were my friend, you wouldn't put me in that situation.
So can you tell us what is the ethnic makeup of your district or of the county in general?
The city of Glenarden, it's like, it's about like 80% African American, I think about 16% Hispanic, and about 4% other.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and
yeah.
So with that being said, I mean, is the community kind of like losing its closeness, and does it seem like it's dividing to some extent?
In a way, it is. Like I said, I've been here since 1964, and when I came up, I mean, Glenarden, I mean, it's a lovely place. I love it to death. That's why I represent it. When I came up in '64, of course, the turmoil that was going on, integration, segregation, all of that. Prince George County was like the last county to desegregate its schools. So, living in Glenarden, I was able to, we were insulated back then. Our parents, we had a school up on the hill that we walked to for elementary school. We went to, we didn't really integrate with a lot of people, with, white people. And our parents protected us. We were basically in a bubble. I didn't know a lot of stuff that was going on outside the borders of Glenarden because we were so well insulated by our parents. So, and everybody was close. I mean, I couldn't walk up the street and do anything because my godmother lived up the street. My mother's best friends lived across the street on each side. So if I did anything, the phone was going to ring. Hey, Betty, Anthony's doing this. James is doing this. So they looked out for each other. They looked out for everybody. We knew who our neighbors were. We helped them out in times of need. As we got, as the community grew, and as people moved out, people got older. The community, you don't have the same camaraderie. You don't have the same connection. As you get another demographic in, they're like, we don't have anything to do with you because, again, of course, the nature of where they came from, they're thinking, hey, we want to keep to ourselves because we don't want to be put on the radar because, of course, with immigration and everything, you never know what's going to happen, so they kind of insulate them. They kind of separate themselves. So, but I try to draw everybody in that I possibly can. Because again, I really enjoy I try to get the community back to the way it was when I was coming up,
Well, I'll tell you like this, when you got close-knit communities like the one that you're used to having, it don't take but a little bit of all of this separatism that's happening now in America to cause a lot of communities to be fractured, and they're fractured for no reason. And people don't know why, but they just happen. But I think, when you have to pull in them reins, sometimes it gets to be a little bit tough.
Yeah, that's true. It is true. So that's what, and that's like I said, in the city of Glenarden, we have that issue too. Again, like you say, sometimes you got to pull in the reins, and people don't understand. You're not doing it to be mean. You're doing it to keep some order and keep some sense of fairness and balance in the community. But everybody takes it personal, and I say you don't take it personal because I always say let the process work and see what you think about it in a year or two, and realize it's for the betterment of the community as a whole.
So what lessons have you learned from serving in local government?
Honestly, the one lesson I learned from serving in local government is that you got to be about the people. That's it. That's the main thing, is that you do it for the people. We make, like I say, on this council position, people think we make a lot of money. We make $8,400 a year. but we spend a lot of times on legislation. You know, I go into the grocery store sometimes, and people stop me. Hey, Councilman, you know, you hear your problems, and I stand there and listen to them because I'm really concerned. You know, I go to a restaurant sometime. They'll come in the restaurant. I can't eat with my family because they'll be like, "Oh, Councilman, can I talk to you right quick?" You know, but it's all about giving of yourself and giving of your people, and it is a sacrifice because, you know, living in a community since I was born. You know, everybody knows your family. Everybody knows your parent. You know, everybody knows your siblings. You know, everybody knows where I live. You know, they'll knock on your door. Hey, Councilman, hey, can I talk to you right quick? You know, my mother's number hasn't changed in 60-something years. So, and it's still in the phone. It's still in it's called the phone book. You know, so they can call you up. You know, so you know and sometimes sometimes you got to have time to yourself because you got to relax. As I say, the 3 R's: relax, release, and relate. You know, because you got to be able, and only way you're going to be able to relate is if you do relax and you release, so that you can seriously concentrate on what the job is at hand and what you really need to do to help the people out. So that's the one thing, is just serving the people. And I've always believed in service. You know, I've always believed that, you know, God commands us to serve, you know, to help our fellow man. You know, you move with love and understanding and try to improve your community the best way you can. You may not be able to do everything, but you can do some things.
So let's move over to your work as an entrepreneur, because I can I think this adds to the fascination of the good work that you do on the city council. Um, First of all, what motivated you to pursue entrepreneurship alongside public service?
I think, you know, when it comes down to entrepreneurship, my biggest motivation when it came down to entrepreneurship was my father. Because my father, he left the federal government and he's decided to take it early out, and he started his own business. And that's where I learned entrepreneurship, with him, working with him and helping him out. You know, he had a janitorial business, you know. And so, you know, with that, you know, I helped him with that. I helped him, you know, with the finances, and I helped him with, you know, work-related issues. He was my biggest inspiration. And he basically showed me that, you know, when you have a business, you're still giving back to the community. And that's why also where I learned to give back to the community, because one thing he always did was he always hired people from the community. In the community, he gave a lot of people their first jobs. You know, he gave me one of my first jobs. When I turned 16, he's like, come with me. I said, well, where are we going? He's like, get your work permit. I'm going to go get your job. And I'm like, I don't want a job, you know, you're going to get a job, you know? So, and that's where it comes in at, you know, just trying to help your fellow man, you know, and that's exactly why I'm a big proponent of expungements also. Because again, one of the things that was happening, I'll never forget this day. I was at Wegmans and I was walking out there, and this guy he was looking really upset. I just spoke to him and said, how you doing? He's like, you know, man, I'm so upset. I said, what's going on? He's like, I'm trying to get a job up here, but I can't get a job because, you know, I have a record, you know. And I said, well, you know, when did you get in trouble? He's like 16, 17 years old. I said, and it's still on your record? He's like, yeah. He's like, it's still on the record. I said, geez. You know, I said, and I said, so what do you got to do to get it off? He's like, I got to get it expunged, but you got to pay for it to get it expunged, but I can't get a job to pay for the expungement. You know, so he's in a catch-22, you know. So like I said, entrepreneurship is very important for, because not only does it develop character, I believe, it also helps you develop your community by providing jobs and examples of what others should do. Because I believe, you know, you show people how you move, and then they will show them how they should move.
So explain that expungement process to us, because I think that's really interesting. You know, that you guys have a process there that you actually do some things to help to contribute to these citizens becoming, great citizens doing things in the community again. Explain that process.
So basically what we do is Councilman Harrison and I, we reach out to the state's attorney's office, and we always partner with the Prince George's County State's Attorney's Office. So we reach out to the State's Attorney's Office, and we partner with them, and they provide the lawyers. And what we do, we provide the space, we advertise it, we reach out to the people, and we also provide the funds to pay for expungements. So what we do is we put out a call to citizens. Okay, if you're from Prince George's County, come on out. All you got to do is come up here. get a number. We'll send you into the room. We have like maybe anywhere from 8 to 10 lawyers in there ready to fill out the expungement papers. Because what you have to do is you got to fill out for expungement. You got to fill out your application. You got to make sure you fill it out correctly, because if you don't, they will kick it back. And then you have to pay for it. Now, some expungements are actually free, and people don't really realize that. If you have a not guilty verdict, you can get a free expungement, but people don't realize that. And the not guilty sits in the case search database also, just as well as a guilty. So what we do is we have them come up there. We put money in the budget so we can go down there, and so we pay for them. So we usually have a couple hundred people come out, and they come out, they see the attorney. The attorney fills out all the paperwork, all the applications for expungements. You get they have the ones that are free and the ones that we pay for. And what we say, okay, since it's an expungement festival, let's make it a festival. So what we do is they be out there for so long. We cook on a grill. We provide hot dogs, chips, hamburgers, sodas. Give them desserts. We make sure that we put tents out. We have employment services for returning citizens. There's so many agencies out there to help them out. We have that. We have those. Then what we do is we collect all the applications. And then what I do, I end up going down to the courthouse. I know Councilman Harrison goes down to the courthouse also. We go down to the courthouse and we submit these applications. And so what we do is submit the free ones, and then the ones we pay for, I submit them and I'll pay for them. And usually we do about $900 to $1,000 worth of it that we have to pay for it, but a big majority of them are free. And then they're submitted to the judge, and the judge will go ahead and approve them. The ones that are free, they'll approve them. And the ones that you have to pay for still have to go to a judge, because sometimes you cannot, in Maryland, you cannot expunge gun crimes. You can never get those expunged. So that's a big issue. That's what I've been trying to talk to some of our elected officials about. Y'all need to change the law. If nobody's committed a gun crime, and we know one gentleman, he was 16 years old. He's 46 or 47 now. 30 years later, he still got that gun charge on there. He can't get it expunged. And all he was doing was standing on a corner, and the police accosted him and found a gun on him. He didn't use it in during the crime. He didn't commit a crime with it or anything, but he has that on his record. So I think that's I think that's unfair. I think, again, they need to have something in place where if you haven't committed any nonviolent crime within at least 7-8 years, that expungement should automatically be done. So the process is, it can be it's a long process. We do about 4 hours. We be out there for about 4 hours. Usually runs over because we get so many people. This year we had so many people, we actually had to take it all. We closed it down, but we also told them, hey, we got somebody here that can still fill out your paperwork. Reach out to them and we'll still pay for it. So.
I think you and Councilman Harrison deserve that applause, because I don't know too many people that's in public service that would actually go to this extent to actually do things to help the citizens. And I think that is so important, because as you mentioned, the young man that's in the catch-22, it's like, what does that young man do if it's like, damn if you do, damn if you don't?
Right.
And so he has no other options. And so when you see somebody that's reaching out for help like that, you have to be applauded for trying to help this young man as best as you did. I really like that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and that's my biggest thing too. Like you say, you're in a catch-22. So what you're going to do? You're going to go back to what you know, and so you be back in the system again. And I think that's what, honestly, I think sometimes that's what society sets us up to do, to stay in the system. They don't want to give us an out. They want us to stay in it, because that way they can marginalize us by labeling us all as criminals, and making it very difficult, for us to get ahead. It really is. It can be very demoralizing. You thinking, well, this is what they think of me. This is what I'm going to be. So I'm thinking, if we can free them up, take that off their record. Then you don't have to. Nobody can, sit there and judge you before they even had a conversation with you. And that was another one of my biggest things when I was talking to some of the state officials. They were like, oh, hey, we just passed a new law, the don't check the box law. So basically what it was a law where they said they can't ask you if you had a criminal conviction on an application. So they said you can't, you used to have that question on there and you check the box yes or no. And I told one of the elected officials, I said, that's the biggest farce I've ever seen in my life. I said, how in the world are you going to sit here? I said, 'cause I'm going to tell you right now, I use Google and I can go to case search. And case search is open to the public. It's public information. I got his name and everything there. All I got to do is type it in. I'm going to see his criminal record. No, he's not going to check the box. I'm going to go to Google and I'm going to search it. I'm going to go to case search. I'm going to go to the tool that you gave me for free to see if you got a criminal record. And no, I'm not going to, more likely, not me personally, but employers are probably like, I'm not hiring that person. Because I believe everybody should be given a chance, whether you have a criminal record or not. If that criminal record is 20 years old, good gracious, give the person an opportunity. But, people are scared. People don't want to trust anybody nowadays,
So how has your business experience influenced your approach in governance?
I'm going to tell you honestly, my business experience influenced my approach in the government is to not run government like a business. And I'm telling you honestly, and I say that because, again, when you run a business, and I always say business is about profits and government is about people. And that's the difference. Businesses, from what I've seen, back in the day, it was different. I think it was different. Businesses had more respect for their employees. They treated their employees with respect. Businesses nowadays, they're just about profits. They just want to stuff their pockets with as much money as they possibly can, And I just think that, there's some things you need to look at, and from a business standpoint, when it comes to running the government, and that's internal controls, fiscal responsibility, and making sure that every dollar is accounted for. But what happens is, some people lose sight of that, and that's all they look at is the dollars and not the people. And I just think that business, like I said, business has given me some ideas on how we can do some things, how we can reach out, how we can put in some internal controls. But I also have to look at the fact that, I'm also dealing with people and people who I'm affecting, their life every day with decisions that I make. I feel that we are in these positions as a city council member, living in a small community, we're grassroots. Our decisions really weigh heavily on what affects the citizens in our community. One thing was, I'll never forget one time I was walking up the street and a senior came and said, Councilman, could you come here? I said, yeah. He's like, he said, could you come in my house? I'm like, come in your house for what? And so he's like, so I went in the house and he says, now, will you look up? And so I looked up and I could see sky. His roof had caved in, his ceiling had caved in. He had no heat. I said, how long have you been like this? I said, this is wintertime. I'm like, how long have you been like this? He's like, well, it's been like this most of the winter. I said, well, why didn't you reach out to me earlier? So I reached out to our council members. We mobilized a Christmas in April to come fix his house. We were able to get him, reached out to our county to get a grant to fix his roof and fix his ceiling. We were able to put new cabinets in there. We put a new furnace in there, new hot water heater, and we got everything taken care of. And the crazy part about it is, he was really appreciative of it. And the crazy part about it is a former council member who used to sit on the city council, first thing he did was when he saw all of that was fixed, he's a real estate agent. Hey, you want to sell your house? I'm like, well, where were you at when the house was dripping? When you could see the sky? So things like that. And, so I'm just like, we gotta do better, because it's about helping the people, and so I'm glad I was able to, make that difference in his life. And, and there's always programs out there where we got to try. And that's why I say we touch people every day because they'll ask us for this help. They ask us for, hey, can I get a turkey basket? I know me, Councilman Harrison, and three other citizens, a former council member, Carolyn Smallwood, former council member, Celestine Wilson, and another citizen, Yvonne White, we take money out of our pockets and we do turkey baskets. So Councilwoman Smallwood knows a lobbyist that ask her every year how many turkeys you need. And she would tell them, I need 25. And we would sit there, they'd give us 25 turkeys, and then we'll put our money together. We'll do the sides. We get macaroni and cheese, stuffing, cranberry sauce, green beans, sweet potatoes, rolls, everything that needs to come with that basket. And we hand out turkey baskets on our own, outside of the city.
Oh, wow. So what industries have you focused on in your entrepreneurial journey?
What
industries?
I think mostly, really the only one I really focused on really was my father's business. That was the biggest one. Like I said, he had a janitorial business. It was a nice sized business and he really needed help. So I really jumped in there and just encouraged him, how to do some things a little bit more fiscally responsible. We worked. I mean, and even with him, I worked for free. Just to help him out. Just keep things moving. That's my biggest thing. As an accountant, I'm gonna tell you honestly, as an accountant, people always ask me, "Do you do taxes?" I'm like, "No, I do not do taxes. Taxes is not my friend." I got a sister who's an accountant. She does taxes. So I got another sister that is an accountant. She does other things. So no, I got somebody to do my taxes for me. So when it comes down to industries, I guess, like I said, that was a business that, like I said, again, I guess it was more family oriented for me because it was something that we started together. He started it and we worked on it and we tried to do what we could do to help it grow. When he passed away, it was, I know I didn't carry it on any further. And I know my sister wanted to, but we were just like, it was just that's a trying time at that point though.
So I need you to tell us, as we're doing this wonderful show, tell your constituents and tell our audience, what is the motivation of James Herring?
I'm gonna tell you the motivation of James Herring is serving as God has commanded me to serve. That's the motivation of James Herring, is that the God teaches us that we have got to serve our fellow man, that we have to respect and help our fellow man. So my biggest motivation is I can help more people sitting in this position than I can going one by one. And so if I have the opportunity to sit in a position and do God's will, honestly, which is serving man and loving our fellow man, then that's my biggest motivation, because I feel I'm commanded to do that. I'm commanded to serve, and I will continue to serve until I can't serve anymore. Even when I leave this position, I still will help out others. If I see somebody down and out, I'm gonna help them out. So that's what motivates me. Is just trying to honor, God and honor His word, which is service. Jesus. I always say, if Jesus can get nailed to that cross to sacrifice His life for us, then I can make a sacrifice for my fellow man to help improve their life.
Wow. How do you balance risk taking with responsibility?
Risk taking with responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Let me say, I've taken some major risks. I've taken some major risks in this position. You deal with a lot of people. I mean, growing up in my neighborhood, I know drug dealers. I know people who are on drugs. I've seen, been around them. I've tried to help them out. I put myself in some unsafe environments to help them out. I've pulled people out of certain houses and everything else that they should not be in. Trying to help them out. I've driven them to rehab facilities, trying to help them out, give them a fresh start, So there's always a risk when you're serving people, because you're going to have to put yourself in environments that may not be safe, but you got to put your faith in God that He's going to protect you. People are always asking, why did you go in there? You're not afraid? I said, no, I'm not afraid, because if when my time comes, my time comes. But at least if my time comes, I'm doing His work.
Oh, wow. Now, that right there, that sums up everything. And I think what that says is that I think regardless of if you're still in as a councilman or not a councilman, that your mind and your repertoire is always city councilman. Is that safe to say that's correct?
That's safe to say. That's safe to say. Yeah. You've been in it so long, it becomes a part of you. It becomes a part of you. You can't just walk away from it. You really can't. Because like I said, I left in 2009, and people were still saying, "Oh, can you help me? Can you help me, head councilman?" I'm like, I'm no longer a council member. Call on the house. Hey, councilman, can you look? I'm no longer a council member. So I will go to the meetings and advocate for them. Then I was just like, what? They're like, are you going to run again? I'm like, no. They're like, please run again. So I ran again, So, it's like I said, whether in the office or out of office, I'm always going to be a council member. And my mindset is going to be to serve the people.
So what challenges did you face starting your ventures?
I guess the greatest challenge I faced, I feel, was, uncertainty. I think it was uncertainty. You always step into something wondering if you really should have done it. You know, even on the city council, I've got it. Like I said, I've done 9 terms, and some of those terms, when I've gotten back in office, I said, should I really have done this? You know, am I going to be able to give what I mean, in feeling that way, am I going to be able to give 100% of myself to this position? Because I'm uncertain if I should even be in this position, you know, because again, I mean, am I motivated to do it? Sometimes you get burnt out. You know, sometimes you ask yourself, is it really worth all of this? Because you sacrifice a lot, you know, when you're in these positions. You know, you got family, you got, you know, family, friends, you know, it's a lot of things you can't do. I mean, when I was on the council, when we were working on the Will Town Center project, you know, we would be up in meetings till like 2 a.m. in the morning, you know, 1 and 2 a.m. in the morning, trying to get this, making sure this development is a quality development for the city of Glen Arden, you know. And after all of that, you'd be like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, because it burns you out. You know, you do that and then you go to work, you know, get out at 2, I'm up at 4 to go to work, you know, so.
So how do you define success as an entrepreneur?
I think success is what you make it. You know, a lot of people define success monetarily, but I don't define success monetarily. I'm not a big, you know, I don't chase the dollar. I believe you'll be blessed as you move through this world and you serve God. He'll bless you in, you know, on innumerable ways. I feel that success is being able to feel that you accomplish a goal that you've set for yourself as an entrepreneur. You know, I mean, you know, I mean, because a lot of times with businesses, you know, most businesses fail the first 5 years, you know, and so you gotta not. If you get past your first 5 years, you will be like, I've done something right so far, you know. So success comes when you feel that you have achieved the goal that you've accomplished. And if that's just to run a business and to, you know, make a profit, you know, and help somebody out and employ people, then that's success. You know, if I can make sure that somebody gets a paycheck and that they can feed their families, I feel that's success. That's something that, you know, you can look back on and say, you know what, not only did yes, I made money off of this venture, but I also was able to bring some people up with me. That's what I feel success is. Being able to have something to bring and pulling people up with you. You know, they always say pull up by your bootstraps, but sometimes, you know, they may not have those boots. I'm going to provide you the boots to stop pulling on your own bootstraps. You know, shall I say, teach a man to fish, you know, he'll eat forever.
So let's talk a little bit about your work that you do in community outreach. What inspired your commitment to community outreach?
I think the one thing that inspired my commitment to community outreach was, again, living in this community all my life and seeing my neighbors, seeing friends who sometimes had trouble. You know, everybody, you know, we lived in a upper middle class neighborhood when I was coming up, you know, but as people get older, you know, they don't have the same resources that they had before, you know, and so they need some assistance. It comes down to, you know, maybe you may need, you know, some food assistance. Maybe you may need some housing assistance. You know, we got neighbors that, you know, they can't maintain their houses, like the gentleman I told you about with his house falling in. You know, so that's what I saw, because a lot of people I knew personally, is knowing them personally has allowed me to see, you know, that they're not just slackers. They're about, you know, they've come down on hard times. So is there some way I can help you out and help you get over that hump, then that's what I'm going to do.
Can you share a story where outreach made a transformative impact?
I think the biggest one, I think, is, I'm going to tell you, it comes back to the expungement. It comes back to the expungement. Me and Councilman Harrison, we had an expungement fair. We were standing out there at the steps. It was all over. We were ready to wrap it up because it was 4 hours and it was a long day. And we're standing there, and this older gentleman, he was 60-something years, about 65, 66 years old. He came out and said, oh my gosh, he's like, I got to thank y'all for this. I got to thank y'all for this. Now I can probably get me a house. I can probably get a job. He's like, you know, over 30 years I've had this on my record and nobody could clean it up. And in one day, y'all got all of this cleaned up, you know, and that really, really made me feel good that, you know, what we're doing is some good work. It was a major impact on somebody's lives. And we heard that story, not only from him, but that's one to stand out, but a lot of them. a lot of people that come back and just say, y'all made a change in my life. I mean, when I was down at the courthouse paying for expungements, one gentleman's like, he's like, I just can't take this. I just can't take this. I can't get expunged. I can't get this done. I can't, they want me to get this expunged. Da, da, da. I said, well, where are you from? He's like, I'm from Prince George County. I said, look, we having an expungement fair. Come on out. We're going to have our next one. I say, I'm paying for them this year, but look for us next year. We're going to have it. So come on out. So I think that outreach has been a very transformative one. Along with, I also with Glenarden Day, which is a huge event. And that really brings out the citizens and brings out the community, because that gets us back to where we were before. Because you get to know people, you get to meet people who you may not know, you get to meet neighbors who you may have never seen, and you realize that you all have something in common.
How do you identify the most pressing needs in your community?
I think the most pressing needs will have to be, I guess in my community, you really got to look at it on a case-by-case basis, really, because again, we have, like I said, again, we have infrastructure needs. They're pressing, but then we got also issues with, we have needs for seniors who need, housing grades, home repairs. I know that in my essence is, I can let the road slide. We can let the road slide. But when it comes down to people, I would rather try to do something that's going to help these seniors out, help some of these families out, that's going to get them, help them along the way if they run into a situation when it comes down to maybe they need some steps fixed, or maybe they need their furnace fixed, or so they can have heat, water, gas, the essentials that everybody else has, So looking at seeing what's pressing, usually for me, it really comes down to how much effect is it going to have on the people? Is it a direct effect? Like I say, a road, you can get away with a road for a little while, but if it's coming down somebody's housing and a quality of life, that's what really is my biggest focus. What is your quality of life? Is your quality of life at a standard that you can be comfortable in your home, comfortable in your being, and safe in your environment?
So how do you identify those through all of those situations and conditions?
Me personally, what I do is I look at the situation. I look at, one, I know a lot of the people in the community, and I can actually see for myself. I would ride by a senior's house and I'd be like, her gutter's hanging down. Something's wrong there. I may ride by, see the windows may be broken out, something like that. Your driveway's broken up. Okay, we may need to do something about that. Like again, seniors, I see them walking. When one time I saw seniors walking in the street, I said, "Well, what's going on?" She's like, "Well, I can't walk on these sidewalks because they're uneven. I don't want to trip and fall and break a hip." Okay, we need to work on the sidewalks. So I look at it, like I said, it comes on a case by case basis. Like I said, I ride my neighborhood. I look at the homes. I see where assistance may be needed. After that, if I see it as an issue, I may send code enforcement over there just to give them hey, is everything okay? Do you need some assistance? So it really comes down to actually being in your community, being outside in your community, traveling in your community, knowing the people in your community. Like I said, I grew up here, so I know a lot of the people from when I was younger. I know, the standards that they used to live in, and if I see that standard has gone down, then obviously there's an issue there. So you just be in tune with your people.
So what role do partnerships play in your outreach success?
Partnerships play a major role. As a matter of fact, like I say, we do Glenarden Day. That's like a $50,000 cost. We do Expungement Fair, which is a couple of thousand. We do a Thanksgiving luncheon. We do Shred Day. We do a Community Garden Day. We do almost to the tune of almost $100,000 in events to bring people out and to get people involved in the community. And we partner with our Parks and Recreation Department. They give us a grant of $100,000. My sister used to work for them, and she's just like, hey, James, why don't y'all apply for grant money? I said, oh, they got that? He's like, yeah. She's like, yeah. So I did that. I applied for grant money. So every year we get $100,000 to cover these events. So I try to tell people, I said, so basically you can come out to these events. There's no money out your pocket. because the city isn't paying for it. The county's paying for it through a grant program. So partnerships are very important, especially when it comes down to, events like that. And not only events, but for infrastructure. Like I said, we're trying to build a police department. The state of Maryland gave us $4 million. So we got that. You gotta, we had some federal grants to help support our police department. So federal partnerships are very, very important because, again, with us being a small municipality with a small tax base, we can't afford some of the things that the larger ones do. So these partnerships come in handy. We got to have a close relationship with our county council members, our state officials, our state senators, our state delegates, which we all have a good rapport with, and even with our federal on the federal level. So you got to have that partnership in order to bring in additional funding, maintain the quality of life that you have, because it's important that you do that. Because again, we can't afford everything that we need to do. So
how do you measure the effectiveness of outreach programs?
I think with me, I think the effectiveness again is a lot of times it's word of mouth. Like I say, expungement, you can see the effectiveness because a lot of people do appreciate what you do. They thank us immensely when they see that their record has been expunged. I know somebody did call and say, I got my record expunged. It opened me up to a lot of other opportunities because, when you have a criminal record, it affects your housing, it affects your getting loans, it affects your employment, so a lot of times they will let us know that. Like with Glen Arden Day, they just come and say, hey, I'm so glad y'all doing this. I can come out into the community. I can enjoy myself. We set up tents and stuff. We have a space for the seniors. We have people waiting on the seniors, like the hand and foot, bring them their food. So they all tell us they appreciate it. So a lot of times it's about the citizens just saying, hey, thank you for a great job. Thanksgiving, like I said, they always, I'm so glad y'all did this because, it's really family oriented. So, and like I said, when it comes down to, like cancer awareness, there's one woman there who was there. I just got to talk to the gentleman that's going to speak on prostate cancer. She's like, my husband wouldn't come. So what me and Councilman Harrison always do every year for cancer awareness, we always try to have a segment of the program that addresses cancers that's prevalent to men, African-American men, to get them out of here. And she basically was like, I wish I could talk to him. We ran out of time. I said, well, you wait right here. I'm going to go get him for you so you can talk to him about that. Because her husband had a lot of the symptoms. And he wouldn't go to the doctor and he wouldn't come up there. So again, a lot of times it's word of mouth. That's how we can tell we're really effective. People tell us, what a great job we're doing. We also know that, we always try to, like I said, with Glen Arden, it just gets bigger and bigger every year. So obviously, something's doing right, and that's another way we could prove our effectiveness. Because when we have these events, they just get bigger every year. Especially with cancer awareness, we just try to maintain the informational flow when it comes down to cancers in the Black community.
So that's we discussed Black history because we do Black History 365. And I ask you, who are the most influential person or persons in your life and career? And you told me that was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., that was Malcolm X, that was Carter G. Woodson, and Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. Can you tell us how has Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. shaped your vision in leadership?
I think his leadership of leading with love and leading with at times with nonviolence shaped my my view on leadership. I think he was a very honorable man when it came down to fighting for the people, and he fought for the people through love and respect, and he preached nonviolence. So, and he sacrificed because everything he did was a sacrifice. He sacrificed his family, he sacrificed his life so that we could live in a community and in an environment and in a country where we are have the same rights as others. So I mean, his walk was very admirable.
So what lessons from Malcolm X resonate most with you today?
And with Malcolm X, I feel the same with him. Only even though he went about it differently, because I do believe I'm gonna tell you, I do believe that you do move in love and peace, but sometimes you got to bring down the hammer. You can move in love and peace, but you can't always be the fool. Sometimes you're gonna have to stand strong and show that you're not going to always bend. That like I said, you can only kick a dog so many times before it's gonna bite you. And I think people need to know that. I'm not saying my thing is don't fear me, but you're going to respect me, because tonight can result in consequences that you may not like. In the same way you treat me, I can treat you. And that's what I feel. With Malcolm X, if you want to treat me that way, he didn't go out here just to fight. He said, no, I'm going to protect myself. I have at my disposal the same thing that you have at your disposal. And what's good for the goose is good for the gander. You cannot continue to do me one way and think I'm going to sit here and just take it. I'm not going to be your whipping post. Sometimes you got to say sometimes that's the only thing that people believe. So yeah.
So when you think about Malcolm X and you think about what his processes was like, and how he saw the civil rights movement in general, to think about him being a man of his word, saying what he meant and meaning what he said, do you think that at any part of him standing up for not just himself but our culture in general during the civil rights movement, do you think that there was any part of that was wrong in his process?
Hold on. Could you hold on 1 second, right quick? Hold on 1 second. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I forgot to plug up my computer and the battery getting ready to go down. I wanted to shut down on you. Sorry. All right, there we go. Okay, could you repeat that question again? That'd be great.
Yeah. So, do you think during the civil rights movement and thinking about Malcolm X, do you believe that there was any part, or was any part of his beliefs and his actions during the civil rights movement? Do you think there's any part of what he did was wrong?
Was wrong?
Yes.
I'm gonna tell you honestly. I think I honestly don't think so. Honestly, because I don't think he preached hate. He preached truth, but you thought it was hate because he was telling you the truth. And so I don't think what he did was wrong at all. People always think you're wrong when you point the mirror at them, when you point the finger at them. When they see themselves in the mirror, they don't like that. I think that he preached the same thing, love of our community, because we got to love ourselves. That was our biggest problem, I honestly believe. And he saw that. And that's why I admire him, because he saw that you got to love yourself before you can love somebody else. And that's not only personally, but also your community, because you can't, how are you going to sit there and think that, you can love others, but you can't love those that's directly around you, that's right around you, that's going through the same plight as you. So I don't think he was wrong. I think he told truth. When you speak truth, everybody doesn't like it. I've learned that sitting on the council. When you tell the truth, people don't like it. They'll make you out to be a villain, and they will turn you into, make people think you're the worst thing since the serpent in the Garden of Eden. So
But see, I think speaking truth to power, it says a whole lot, and I know that there's a lot of people, as you stated, there's a lot of people that don't like the truth. But I think when you think about at those times, I don't think we could have afforded not to have Malcolm X during that time. And I say that because I think that there was this thing of, trying to run over, non-white people, regardless of the case. And so, with that being said, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with any parts of the civil rights movement, but I think Malcolm X is the one that people highlight the most as calling him this militant and this bad person, and just all those things. And I
Mhm.
always try to, for me, um, I like to make sure that I straighten that, because I don't see him as being militant. I just think that what he did was so to the point and in your face that it was just plain and simple. You hit me, I'm going to hit you back.
Exactly right. And militant is just a way to agitate the others to feel that he's a threat. That's basically what it was. That's why they labeled him a militant, I think, because white people wanted him to be a threat. J. Edgar Hoover wanted him to be a threat. And what better way to get other people riled up than to say this man is going to come after you, and he's a black man with a gun.
Right. So, can you tell us, how has Carter G. Woodson's emphasis on education influenced your career?
That was I read The Miseducation of the Negro, which I thought was a very powerful book. Because when I read it, and I read that, it had to be like 2000. I read it some years back, but it was still relevant to this day. That our education systems are failing us. That our education systems are teaching us to be subservient. Our education system is telling us that we are less than, because they don't put in the resources for our communities, and I've seen that here in my own community, to give us the best education. It basically marginalizes you to live at a certain standard that they feel you need to be at. You will never reach the heights that they attain, because they're not giving you the education to do that. And his book was emphasized that when I read it, I was just like, this is the same thing that's happening today. I can see it happening in our school system today. And I just think that we as a community should look at that and, emphasize education. I mean, it does sadden me that we as a community have also played into that, because again, like in Prince George's County, I mean, our county has some of the most failing schools. We're, African-American county. And we have some of that. I think we rank like number 2 in the state when it comes down to schools. And but we as a community have to do better with ensuring that our kids are educated. You can't just let the tablets and the internet, educate your children. I think we have to take that step further. A lot of other communities, they educate their kids as they go along. They have separate education, if they got to.
Well, see, that was my next point. I want to get your opinion on that. I think bringing us together to school us with these other folk has done us so much harm that it's irreprehensible that it'll never be fixed. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that 100%, and I tell you why. Because when I was I went to Glen Woods Elementary School. It was an all-black school. That school was built from fundraisers from the mothers in this community. It was a Rosenwald, what they call a Rosenwald school at first. And so we wanted our own school. And so the principal kind of says, we're not giving you your own school. So they raised money to build the Rosenwald School, which then they turned into Glen Woods Elementary School. And when I went to that school from kindergarten to 3rd grade. And every teacher there, they knew your parents. They emphasized education. They emphasized excellence. The principal, she was something, a lovely person, but boy, she could be strict as I don't know what. But we needed that. She kept us in line. And her name was Miss Henson, loved her to death. But she kept us in line. And then in 3rd grade, I was bused. They had to do integration. They bused me to Whitehall Elementary School in Bowie. I get to that school. And they just wanted to work. Huh?
I said way over in Bowie.
Way over in Bowie, you pull up. I mean, the first day we pulled up there, it's crazy. You were in the 3rd grade, and you got grown adults out there calling you the N-word and cussing you out and saying, "Get out of here! You don't belong in the school." We get off the bus. We're in the lunchroom because people was calling them bomb threats. And then once you start going to the classes, they wanted it to work, so they didn't really emphasize education. They just want you to behave. They did not. I don't think we were getting it. They didn't push for the excellence that I was getting at Glen Woods. At Glen Woods, they knew I had to be at a certain level. We had to be twice as good in order to get the same thing that other people got. So at Whitehall Elementary School, that's the name of the school, is Whitehall Elementary School. It was just like, okay, well, we want to make sure there's no issues. We don't want no racial issues. So we're just going to make this work. If they're not that great, we'll just don't push on them. Don't push back. They didn't give us the same thing. I didn't feel the same quality of education, And like I said, when we had our own, we had greater expectations. They didn't let us sit there and basically say, oh, I can't do it. They know, no, you can do it. They emphasized they had the can-do attitude, and Whitehall is like, I can't do it. Okay, well, we'll work on it later. If you don't get it, that's okay. No, it isn't okay. You got to learn your math. You got to learn English. You got to learn all of that. Don't sit there and give us a lower level of education because you want the system to work. I've always thought that integration was some people get mad at me when I say it was a big mistake. Mm-hmm. When we had our own, we watched out each other. When we had our own communities, the rich lived next to the poor. You could always see where you could go to. You always had an example. If you coming up in a one bedroom apartment, you got a doctor that lives two houses down that you could attain to be that doctor, or you could be that nurse or that teacher. You could reach those social standings just by going to school and being educated. You saw a way out. We patronized our own businesses. We didn't, money flowed because we kept it in our community. Now, the white man's ice is colder, so we go everywhere else.
Mm-hmm. So what impact has Dr. Frances Cress Welsing had on your worldview?
She's another one. I read her book, The ISIS Papers, and it just opened my eyes. I mean, some of her things is out there, but her views on the system is what really molded my view on things. That, the system is set up to demoralize you, demean you, and belittle you, and keep you at a certain economic and social level. That movies, TV, newspapers, and everything else is written so that you can see yourself as less than. And that they're going to do that because, again, her biggest thing was they're trying to protect themselves. And I honestly believe that when you're trying to protect yourself, you're going to do whatever you can to keep yourself on top. So what I think it does for me is that it makes me see that I don't get mad when people do some of the things they do to our community, because I understand that they've been conditioned to think that way. I don't like it, but I'm not going to get upset, because when I get upset, that means I'm taking energy from what I need to do to move forward. I'm not going to give anybody that kind of power over me to say that, oh, you're less than, and I'm supposed to walk around like, oh, they said I'm less than, I'm going to get mad with them. No, because when you get mad, you're just using that energy that you could be using to pull yourself up. There ain't no need, and I'm sitting there getting upset about it. That's what they're conditioned to do. They're going to do it. I can't change their mind. They're going to believe what they want to believe. And so who am I to sit there and try to make them believe any different? Yeah, I can show them, though. I can show them, that, no, you're wrong. And we as a people have done that. We've sustained so much over 400 years. We've pulled ourselves up. I don't think like other people.
Yeah. So when you think of Dr. Welsing, what is the first thought that comes to your mind when you think about the ISIS papers?
Systematic racism being taught and being disseminated through media, through newspapers, through editorials, now through social media, and that they're using in her ISIS papers. It just lets me see that they're using every means, every social means that's at hand. And now with the internet and TikToks and all this other stuff, we looking like complete idiots on some of those things, that they're going to continue to use that. And we need to be very, very careful on what we take in and what we read and what we view as entertainment, because they're basically telling you that you're less than, and I mean, people fall for that. We don't have to do everything that they tell us to do. I mean, I think like drugs in the community, they flooded the community with drugs, but again, telling you to use them, but we didn't have to use them, but we knew what they were doing with them. We knew they were trying to destroy us, and we fell for that okie doke because they're like, it ain't that bad, well, you're that's what y'all do anyway, So, and so with hers has made me see that, you got to be very, very careful because you can't. I always believe this, and I tell people this all the time: be careful what you open your spirit up to, because if you open up to that negativity, you're going to become that negative. That you're going to be that negative.
Yes, sir. How do these leaders collectively inspire your work in public service?
I think every last one of them lets me see that, not only should I help our fellow man, they also let me see that how I actually should move in that position, how I need to make sure I'm doing for others and not trying to, do for myself. They let me see that when I'm out here doing this public work, that I got to be very careful who I run into, who I listen to, who I follow, what I read. People are going to tell you all kinds of things to trip you up. I always believe the devil's out there all the time trying to put his foot in front of you. He's going to trip you up one way or the other, So collectively, I just think they've all shown me that, you move with love, but you also need to understand that sometimes you have to move with strength, like with Malcolm X. And at the same time, while you're moving with that strength, also read as much as you possibly can and try to find direction that enhances where you want to go, and not only and show that you need to embrace the positive in our community. It's so much we've done. Everything isn't negative. We need to do our own research. We need to do our own reading. We need to do our own, put our own stories out there. There's so much stuff out there. Like right now, they're trying to roll the clock back. They don't even want to show you Black history. They don't even want any Black history in the Black History Museum. That's absolutely crazy. So my thing is, that means they want to take you back to the point where you see yourself as nothing, and that they're seen as gods because they don't want you to see how much dirt they've actually done to us throughout the centuries. Well, and that's just the way it's hiding.
Well, I think anytime you're a thief, and anytime you think being a thief is good, and you can make a positive out of criminal activity, then that in itself shows who these people are. But it's up to us to make that difference, because that's never going to change. There are always going to be savages. There are always going to be criminals. And so we just have to make sure that we do what we have to do in our communities, because that's never going to change with them.
And that's true. And I honestly believe that too. Again, and for those who basically think that, this president is somebody because he has a felony, he's just like us, that tells you a lie. You're not just like him, because you will never be president. You will never get those bank loans that he got as a felon. You will never get the housing that he got as a felon. So you sitting there thinking, oh, we're just the same as him. He's a felon, so he's just like me. I can relate to him. You can't relate to him, because you will never have what he has. But what he will do is he will put you in jail as a felon. Yep. And that's what he's doing down in D.C.
Yes. Yep. So how do you integrate their teachings into your entrepreneur journey?
Again, when it comes down to these teachings in your entrepreneur journey, you always, again, it comes back down to, looking at your goal, looking at your objective, looking at what you're trying to obtain, and being sure that, again, what you're listening to, what you're reading, again, that it makes sense, that people are not going to be out here to try to, because people will be out here to try to, trip you up every time as you move along. When you're starting a business, people get envious of you, especially the other. If he sees you're successful, he's going to figure out a way to get that from you. So you got to be smart, like I say, like Martin Luther King. You move with love, but you got to also move with strength when it comes down to Malcolm X. Especially when it comes to business, you got to be able to say no. No, I don't want to do business with you. No, I'm not going to sit there and take this opportunity, because that opportunity will undermine me. And you also got to remember that who you're working with, like with Carter G. Woodson and Francis Cress Wilson, that you know they're already conditioned to act a certain way. I'm not saying they all are like that, and you can't move like that thinking they're all going to do like that. But just be very, very cognizant of the person that you're talking to and what they're saying, and do your research before you take anything that they say at face value, because the business that you have will be the business that they have, especially if it's successful.
Damn. That's the whole goal. Remember, a thief is a thief. Don't care how you want to look at it.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Final question for you. What role do these figures play in your community outreach philosophy?
Again, all four of them has sacrificed. They've sacrificed to bring civil rights to our community. They've sacrificed to improve the community. They've sacrificed to inform the community, and they love the community. And all of those great qualities that I carry with me when it comes down to serving in public life. Service, love, caring, and providing information and transparency. There's nothing. I mean, that's basically what it is. And one thing that when somebody comes up to me and say, you're a politician, and I'd be like, no, don't ever call me a politician, because I'm not a politician. I said I'm a public servant, because politicians work for votes, and the public servant works for the people. So I said, do not call me a politician, because I do not work for votes.
So, in closing, do you have any words of wisdom and encouragement for our audience? And can you tell them how they can connect with you via your social media or your website, or anything about your businesses that we can offer them?
Well, I guess in closing, I'd just like to just tell the audience I appreciate you logging in. I think this is a great venue to get information out. I thank you, Mr. King, for your having me on here. I think, like I said, I think it's a great vehicle for us to basically express ourselves and get information out to the audience, free from any form of intimidation. Because, on other venues, you have to say certain things and move a certain way in order for them to, before they cut you off, But I just appreciate you having me on here. I think the only thing I like to leave people with, and for me as a person, and for them, and as for people, I guess, is just move with love. I always tell people, I say, people say, read the Bible, read the Bible, read the Bible. And they say, because reading the Bible is hard. I said, no, it isn't. I say, because there's one tenet in that Bible that's preached throughout the whole thing, and that's love, Love. If you follow that one tenet, everything else falls into place. You done mastered half the Bible, because you're moving the way that God asked you to move. And that's all I ask, is that we love each other, that we care for each other, and that you help out your fellow man. And, you don't have to run for elective office. You don't have to be out here like me and Councilman Harrison at all these events and providing all of these avenues and everything else. You can help one person at a time, your next door neighbor, if they need a hand. The person that's on the street, sometimes, you can't always step over them after church. Give them $1, But it all comes down to us as a community helping each other out, and us as a people helping each other out, because that's what we used to do. So I'm just asking people, just love each other, follow the commandment that God has entailed on us. It is entailed on us, and that's love each other and care for each other, and do His work. That's it.
Well, I'd like to thank you for spending this time with us, because I definitely appreciate not only the work you do, but the work and the impact that you're having in the community. I definitely want to have you and Councilman Harrison back on the show, to do an update on the progress that you guys are making. And
Great.
So, I'll reach out to you guys with some dates, and hopefully, we can come to a great date. It'll be next season, of course, which is season 4. But what I would also like to just say in part, as for this message that you left for us tonight, is that it's very, very important, I think, for people to understand what community is and what love is.
Mm-hmm.
And the message that you just delivered to us tonight clearly states that community and love is number one.
Yeah.
Because in order to go out and to serve constituents the way you have by making purpose and meaning for people that were missing stuff, couldn't get things done in their houses, you made those things work for those people. That's what the work in public service is about, but that's also what it is when you say, hey, this is about my community.
Mm-hmm.
Some people like to use that in the wrong way. But I can say, and I'm saying to those that are watching tonight, that Councilman Herring is the perfect example of what it is to be about the community, that's building the community, that's unifying the community, that's loving the community, and that's teaching in the giving back to make sure that people understand what these things mean. This is what we have to do continuously around this country. For each and every last one of our communities, this is how we have to make that impact. Because if we make that impact and we do that work and that due diligence, we can make that work. We know that not everybody is going to be on board. Not everybody, but that little 5-10%, hey, they will come along once they see that the majority is doing what has to be done. So don't let those little apples get their way. For those of you that are watching on all of our channels, including the YouTube channels, if you have not yet subscribed and enabled all notifications, I would appreciate your support if you would do that for us, please. Once you subscribe and you enable all notifications, you will get the notifications when we're going live, when we're doing the show, but also you will be able to go back and watch all of the previous episodes where you can get all of the great teachings from all the great guests that have been here on this show. For those of you that have not done this yet, we do have a community. In that community, we would like to get people subscribed to the community because inside that community, you can watch the show. You can also, on the other side, you will be able to get your copy of the magazine. You can comment on posts. You'll be able to post. You can do your networking there. You can do it all there as the community is growing. And at some point, going into next season, for everybody that are participating in the community, the points that you have, we will have a system that will allow you to redeem those points. And finally, next season, we are having a new segment that we are bringing out, which is called Final Word Fridays. So in season 4, we will be on 5 days a week. That's Monday through Friday. And on Final Word Friday, it's a nice little roundtable where we get to talk about hot topics, where you get to talk about the thing that's in your mind that you want to get off, that's bothering you about community, about what's happening. You are able to discuss that, and we can all do this in a civil manner. So please make sure you check us out. Please subscribe, and please continue to watch us on America in Black and White as we will continue to color conversations on the canvas of America. I'm your host, Charles King. We will see you guys tomorrow night. You all have a great evening. Thank you again, Councilman, and I will be in touch with you.
Thank you. All right. Good being here.
Yes, sir.